On January 6, 2026, two elite Grandmasters met online. Carlsen faced Hans Niemann. What followed was a tense and tactical chess battle. White opens the game with d4, taking control of the center. Black replies with d5. After c4 and cax, we reach the Slav defense. Black builds a solid pawn structure and prepares to resist White's central pressure. White develops the knight to f3. Black mirrors this with knight to f6. White plays g3, preparing a kingside fianchetto. The dark squared bishop comes to g4, pinning the knight. White develops the second knight and increases pressure in the center. Black captures on c4 and gains a temporary extra pawn. But this pawn comes with a positional cost. It is advanced, vulnerable, and the long diagonal opens for White's bishop. Carlsen does not rush to recapture the pawn. He calmly completes development. Black develops the knight to d7. White castles dots. Now comes an important positional idea. Pawn to a4. This prevents Black from pushing the b-pawn and supporting the pawn on c4. The opening phase ends with roughly equal chances. White has better development. Black has an extra pawn whose fate is still unclear. Carlsen enters the middle game actively. The queen goes to c2. Black's queen also becomes active, looking for counterplay on the queen side. White's knight suddenly retreats to the edge of the board. At first glance, this looks strange, but the idea is clear. The knight prepares to jump to b4 and attack Blau's bishop. Niemann understands the danger and retreats the bishop. Black's queen now moves to a6. Stockfish preferred queen to a5, but Niemann chooses a safer square. This decision allows a tactical idea for White. The knight jumps to b4, attacking the queen. The bishop captures the knight. Carlsen immediately recaptures. Black responds by moving the other bishop to 5, attacking the white queen. Carlsen calmly retreats the queen to cone. Then the bishop boldly moves to f4, occupying a strong central square. From e4, the bishop looks deep into White's position. White challenges this piece at once. The rook moves to a1, lining up against the bishop. Black creates a small luff for the king. However, this move is a bit slow. The black king is still in the center without castling, and this can become dangerous. Carlsen reorganizes his knight to fight the central bishop. An exchange follows. Black pushes the pawn from cx forward, attacking the pawn on d4. Carlsen calmly accepts the challenge. Now Niemann executes a tactical idea. The queen jumps to 6 and gives check. This is a Zwischenzug, an intermediate check. Black gives check first, before resolving the tension. Carlsen must respond with his king. Black uses the moment to develop the knight to d5. This knight is very strong, attacking several key squares. Carlsen regains the sacrificed pawn. The white queen moves to c4 and takes an active central position. From here, it supports play on both flanks. A series of exchanges follows. Black still cannot castle and must deal with the queen. Niemann brings heavy pressure. Rook to bait attacks along the b files. Dot. The white queen retreats toward the center, keeping control. Capture is impossible because of tactics on the c file. Finally, black castles kingside. The king goes to gate. The rooks are connected, but this happens too late. The position is already open. White pieces dominate key lines and squares. A rook moves to the c-file, confronting the black queen. The plan is simple. Double rooks and apply pressure. The black queen retreats. White calmly improves piece coordination. Black finally activates the last knight. There's a critical moment here. Black could capture the pawn on b2 with the rook, but this pawn is poisoned. A knight fork would follow. Niemann sees the trap and wisely avoids it. Carlsen jumps with the knight and attacks the queen again. The black queen retreats once more. Now, the queen and rook stand on the same b-file. Magnus continues to collect material. White now has 2 extra pawns. Even more important, the a pawn becomes a passed pawn. There are no black pawns left on the a file. This pawn is now a major strategic weapon. Black tries to generate counterplay by activating the second rook. Carlsen responds calmly. The knight jumps to a5, creating new tactical threats. Black's position becomes increasingly difficult. There is no compensation for the material deficit. The king remains under pressure. The rooks are exchanged. A rook drops to b7, attacking the white queen and defending against checks. But Carlsen finds a much stronger move. The rook from Köln storms into c8 and delivers check, a powerful invasion on the 8th rank. The black king has no choice but to run. Carlsen brings the rook and queen together on the 8th rank. This rook and queen battery is extremely dangerous. Mate, or serious material losses are coming. Black pushes the pawn to g5. Carlsen calmly retreats the knight to d3. From here, the knight also protects the e1 square. The black queen tries to return to the fight with queen to b3. Seeing the queen move away, Carlsen brings the rook back. The white king is now well protected. All that remains is to convert the passed pawn. The black king also improves its position. It returns to g7, stepping away from the edge. Now comes the decisive march. The passed pawn moves to f5. This is the beginning of the end. Black throws a rook in front of the pawn. The idea is to block it from behind. Pawn to a6. The rook stays behind the pawn. Carlsen decides to simplify the position. He offers a queen exchange. Niemann understands that resistance is useless and accepts. The pawn captures the queen and lands on b7. White now has a pawn on b7, one step away from promotion. Black has no queen, and stopping the pawn is nearly impossible. Niemann tries one last trick. The rook returns to b5, standing behind the pawn, but everything is calculated. The knight jumps to c5 and defends the pawn on b7. If the rook captures the knight, the pawn will promote. The last black knight jumps into action, hoping to interfere. Carlsen completes the final coordination. The rook moves to a1, the knight trying to block the pawn. Then comes the final move. The rook moves to a8 do. The rook now controls the entire 8th rank. Any attempt to block on bait fails immediately. At this moment, Hans Niemann resigns. On move 41, black gives up. 1-0. Magnus Carlsen scores a precise and instructive victory. A game rich in tactics and deep strategic ideas. Thank you for watching, and see you again on the chessboard.